Hi Math 10s. This lesson is the first example out of our new chapter on measurement. So lesson 1.1 is about imperial measures of length. So if I were to, in class, ask you how tall you are, a lot of you would give me heights like 5'6", 6'2", 5'2", whatever. And so a lot of you are probably pretty comfortable with imperial measurements. That's what imperial measurements are things like feet, inches, miles, yards. If you ask somebody in Germany or somewhere in Europe how tall they are, they'll often say, oh, I'm 1.78 meters or some other measurement in meters or centimeters, because SI units, standard international units, are used in more parts of the world. Canada adopted SI officially in 1976 when I was just a baby, but remnants of imperial still live on. But if you drive across the border, you'll see that the signs in Canada, while they're 100 kilometers per hour speed limit in Canada, it'll say 60 or 65 miles per hour speed limit in the US. US is still very much using imperial. If I asked you how far from the school you live, you might say 5 miles if you're thinking imperial, or you might say 8 kilometers. And those two measurements are the same size, they just happen to be in different units. So a couple of vocabulary terms here besides imperial, obviously. A referent is just some kind of real life object or even a body part that you're going to use to estimate the measurement of something. So we don't all walk around with a ruler to measure everything we run into. And so, for example, the width of your thumb, approximately an inch. Now, obviously, we all have slightly different width of thumbs, and so that wouldn't be, a very scientific way of saying what an inch is, but it gives you a pretty good guess. If you're trying to measure, how big is your calculator or your phone or something, you could just measure it in how many thumb widths it is. If you're thinking SI units, the width of a dime, the thickness of a dime, maybe a better description there is about 1 millimeter. Not perfect, but approximately. A stride length, you'll see soccer referees use this all the time because they don't mark off a soccer field the same way they do in football. When they want to get somebody to back up 10 yards, they just stride out about 10 strides, and it's about 10 yards. And the least creative one, my foot, is approximately a foot. In imperial measurements, it's actually quite close. So a lot of the measurements you're going to use in 1.1 are going to be inches to feet, feet to inches, feet to yards. There are 3 feet in 1 yard. And this one is an inconvenient one, 5,280 feet in 1 mile. So you'll notice a big difference with imperial measurements is it's not always times 10 times 10 times 10 times 10. The nice thing about SI, and probably the biggest reason to move to SI for the world, was 1 meter is, it's a little bigger than a yard, but still about 1 big stride. And then if you have 1,000 of those, you have a kilometer. If you have 1/10 of it, you have a decimeter. If you have 100th of it, you have a centimeter. If you have 1,000th of it, you have a millimeter. And so, most of you are probably pretty comfortable converting SI units, but today's lesson is all about imperial units.